Alright YouTubers, today we're going to be disassembling, assembling, and reviewing the Mossberg 4x4. Pause this video when needed while disassembling or assembling. Let's make sure this firearm's clear before working on it. Looks all clear to me. I'll be using this drill press vise to free up my hands while working on the firearm throughout the video. Also, this scribe will be used to point out different parts on the firearm as well. Here's some of the basic hand tools I'll be using to disassemble the firearm today. Alright guys, let's get started with this disassembly. The first step is going to be removing the bolt, so go ahead and get that bolt ratchet back. Depress the bolt stop downward and remove the bolt rearward out of the receiver. Next we'll be removing the stock. In doing so, we're going to remove the front and rear action screws. I sped up the time here to make the video go a little quicker. After the action screws are out, go ahead and remove the stock. Remove the magazine guide from the stock, and then separate the magazine from the guide. Next, we're removing the magazine follower and spring. Depress the rear of the magazine follower. Once the front of the follower pops up, slide the follower forward and remove the follower and spring. To remove the magazine spring, lift up and slide the spring. Remove the trigger housing assembly by removing the trigger housing screw and washer. Next, we're going to be removing the bolt stop. While unscrewing the bolt stop screw, put pressure down on the bolt stop spring. Do not disassemble the trigger housing assembly. The pins are either staked or riveted. If removed, you will need new ones on reassembly. Next, we will be removing the striker assembly from the bolt body. Compress the cocking piece and rotate the shroud clockwise. Rotate the shroud all the way clockwise until aligned with the bolt handle. Use a vise to compress the cocking piece. While compressed, rotate the bolt body. Now that the cocking piece is out of the notch in the bolt body, you can rotate it clockwise. Be careful from the spring tension from the striker assembly. Remove the pin in the side of the bolt body to remove the bolt head. To disassemble the cocking piece and shroud from the striker assembly, compress the striker assembly and push a punch through the hole in the side of the striker assembly. Remove the pin in the side of the cocking piece to remove the cocking piece as well as the shroud. I recommend using a magnetic tray to catch the pin in the side of the cocking piece while punching it out. Go ahead and remove the punch pin in the side of the cocking piece to remove the cocking piece and shroud from the rest of the striker assembly. To remove the extractor, use a punch to push towards the center of the bolt face. Be careful for the spring and ball behind it. While pushing the extractor towards the center of the bolt face, put pressure downward as well to hold the spring tension from the extractor spring and ball. To remove the ejector, use a punch to drive out the pin in the side of the bolt head. If you place the bolt head in the vise like so, you can drive out the pin without worrying about the ejector flying off. Alright guys, that's a full disassembly. Next we're going to get into the assembly of the rifle, and then the review. The first step of the assembly is going to be putting the bolt head back together. We'll start with the ejector spring, and then the ejector itself. When installing the ejector, make sure the ejector itself is lined up with the ejector pin. To hold the ejector still, I'm going to use another punch. That will help me drive the ejector pin all the way through without any hiccups. I know the ejector pin will be set when the other punch has been driven out. Place the extractor spring and ball back in the bolt face. I highly recommend using a vise when installing the extractor. Use an oversized punch to compress the ball and spring while driving in the extractor. Align the notch in the bolt head with the notch in the bolt body. When replacing the pin back in the bolt body, align the hole in the pin with the firing pin hole. You should be able to see through the firing pin hole. Place the shroud and the cocking piece back on the striker assembly. Next we'll be driving the pin back into the cocking piece and through the striker assembly. Make sure the pin is flush with the cocking piece. Compress the shroud on a striker assembly and remove the pin. Place the striker assembly back in the bolt body. Once back in the bolt body, compress the shroud and rotate counterclockwise. Keep rotating the shroud until the cocking piece lands in the notch, like so. Next we'll be installing the bolt stop back on the receiver. First the bolt stop spring, then the bolt stop itself. Put some pressure on the spring to align the bolt stop hole with the receiver. Next we'll be installing the trigger assembly back on the receiver. Now install the trigger housing screw and washer. Next we'll be installing the magazine spring back into the magazine follower. Now we're going to be installing the magazine follower and spring back into the magazine. Once installed, be sure to compress the follower all the way down. Place the magazine back into the magazine guard, and then place the magazine guard back into the stock. Install the stock back onto the receiver. Remember, the longer action screw goes in the rear and the smaller one in the front. Alright guys, last but not least, we're going to place the bolt back into the receiver, and then we're going to jump straight into the review. Overall, it's not a bad rifle for a shotgun manufacturer. It was fairly easy to disassemble as well as assemble. The stock is comfortable, but it also has a really sharp look to it as well that I like a lot. One of my favorite parts about the rifle has to be the bolt handle. I really like the Mossberg print in the middle of the chrome bolt. The grip on the rifle is really comfortable as well. There's no problem with reaching the safety or the trigger. The stock also has a really comfortable cheek rest as well, which helps tremendously with the line of sight. Also, the scope placed in the right spot helps a lot as well. The rifle has a free-floating barrel, which gives it an edge at the range. The detachable mag helps out a lot, especially when downloading at the end of a hunt or a long day at the range. And if you're ever in the military, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The trigger on this rifle is adjustable, which is awesome. But not only that, it's easy to replace if ever damaged in the future. The barrel on this rifle is fluted, which is pretty cool. It adds a really nice look to it. And it has a really awesome muzzle brake on the end of it as well. That helps a lot with the recoil of the rifle. This rifle is chambered in .270, which is a really nice flat shooting round, and one of my favorites. The stock also has swivel studs, so you can attach a rifle sling, which is a must-have, especially if you live in Colorado like me and you hunt the Rockies. If you've ever hunted the Smoky Mountains or the Appalachian Mountains, you know what I'm talking about. The recoil pad on this rifle is comfortable, but it's not fit properly. You should be able to run a ruler across your stock and not have it butt up against the recoil pad. Alright, that about sums up my review, guys. I'm brand new to the YouTube community. If you like this video, please like or subscribe at the Amateur Smith down below, or leave a comment. Thank you, YouTubers, and I'll see you next time at Amateur Smith.